Okay.
Go.
So welcome everyone. Looks like there's three.
There's another
Um,
one coming in.
oh great. Okay. And it's a nice evening, although it is dark outside already. I'm Dr. Lydia Gray, and I'm on the board of directors of IDCTA, and I want to welcome Dr. Lisa Borzynski all the way from Kentucky tonight. She works at Wisconsin Equine Clinic, which is in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. She's worked on my horse. She's going to work on my friend's horse tomorrow. She works on Molly's horses. Whose horses doesn't she work on? Um, one thing I read in your bio that I want to point out, and this is kind of a great segue into what you're going to be talking about tonight, is if you became an FEI veterinarian and started working on international events in 1999. So this would be your 25th year.
Wow, yeah, gosh, you're right.
Oh,
Yeah.
you hadn't thought about that. Okay, all right. Well, I don't want to take up any more time because I really want to hear about this. And
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. Well, yeah, so I'm Lisa Borzynski. I have been a veterinarian since 1993. Graduated from Wisconsin. I practiced in Kentucky and Minnesota, and I've been back at Wisconsin Equine for the last 18 years. As Lydia said, I've been working. I started actually working at FEI events because I was an event writer. I still am an event writer, but I was actually preparing to do my first FEI event when I was practicing in Minnesota and riding there and working with the renowned Ralph Hill, who was our rider development program coach. And so he recruited me to be the vet for our mock jog as we were preparing for our FEI event, and he was competing at Rolex those years, and so invited me to come to Kentucky the following spring to see how things actually went. And so I got hooked up at the Kentucky, well, formerly Rolex Kentucky 3-day event back, yeah, in 1999, and I've been working there every year since. And through that became an FEI vet, actually in 2009. And so then I became a veterinary delegate for competition. So it's been kind of a long journey, many years in the making. And so this actually was this experience at Aachen was really kind of the highlight of my career, the highlight of my FEI career for sure. Up until now, I actually was working at the Tokyo Olympics, which was also like a really incredible experience. But I was kind of, I guess, one of the worker bees at Tokyo. In this case, I was one of the head honchos for Aachen, so that was kind of a great experience. So again, it was kind of like the most prestigious event that I've been a veterinary delegate for. So so I'll explain a little bit about what Aachen is and what we do there. And oh shoot, hopefully this is gonna, oh, there we go. Okay. So Aachen is it's the largest equestrian sport or sporting event in the world. I'm actually going to just close this so I don't see this, and so I can try to see. I don't know if I can make that smaller. Okay, no, can't see on my slide. But it's actually the um, Calgary Stampede is considered like the largest event, but that is not just exclusively a horse event. This is an exclusive horse event, and this was 350,000 people from all over the world that came, mostly Europe. But as you can see from the size of the stadium, there's no other stadium in the world for equestrian events that is this big and packs this many people. This stadium has 40,000 plus seating, plus all the standing room. So there were probably close to 50,000 people, packing this venue for, every night of the competition, which was 10 days long. And it was really a 5-ring circus. They have multiple events, and what the CHIO stands for, it's the Concours, it's this actually now I gotta be able to read it because I can't see. Oh, here we go. Okay, the Concours Hippique International Officiel, and for anybody that speaks French, I'm sorry, I just slaughtered that. But what that means, it's an FEI designation, and so the FEI is based out of Switzerland, so the official language is French and English, but it basically means that this is like a championship. This is a one of the biggest or highest levels of competition outside of a World Equestrian Games or outside of the Olympics. This is kind of the next biggest type of event. And so at Aachen, and again, I kind of slaughter that because I'm not going to like spit all over to say the German pronunciation, but it is the most prestigious show in Europe, and people come from all over Europe to watch and to compete. There were 32 countries that were represented at this competition in 5 different disciplines. So we had jumping, dressage, eventing, the 4-in-hand driving, and then vaulting. And it was not just FEI competition. There were some national competitions as well, but for 10 days it was nonstop competition, literally in like 5 different rings. So it really was a 5-ring circus. So and they had Nations Cup competition in all 5 disciplines. This facility and this group has hosted many European and World Championships in the past. They hosted the 2006 World Equestrian Games, and they will be the host for the 2026 World Equestrian Games. Okay, so the city of Aachen has a really interesting history, which I didn't really understand before I got there, and I won't really get into all of it, but dating back to 3000 BC, they have some really interesting ruins there that, you know, kind of document through the centuries, all the changes. King Charlemagne, you know, kind of invaded and took over in the 9th century. And they built this Aachen cathedral here, built in 805. It was also an important location for many wars and in World War II. And part of it is that it's a really unique location, which is actually on the border of Germany, the Netherlands, and Belgium. So from a hilltop right near the showgrounds, you can actually see all 3 countries. So it's right on the border of those 3 countries. And so this was, you know, kind of a strategic location, and along with the hillside for many battles, and it was heavily damaged in World War II. The show facility itself was originally built as a racetrack in 1898, and so it's been there for, you know, 135 years or whatever, but it's actually been running this particular show for 100 years. So this was the Aachen show. This was their 100th anniversary. So it was really a special year to be there. You know, really interesting to see the history. The venue itself is incredible and obviously well established, being there for 100 years. They just keep making it better. But there was the main jumping ring with 40,000 capacity, the dressage ring with 6,300. And then the eventing runs out, of course, on the cross-country course, but then their show jumping is done in the main show jumping ring with the 40,000, and they do their dressage in the dressage ring. There was a driving stadium, a vaulting stadium. The vendors and the whole shopping complex was just unbelievable, with over 200 vendors. Just some of the, you know, the views from around the facility, you know, nice with fountains and some permanent buildings. Of course, a lot of the vendors were in some tents, but, you know, beautiful tree-lined walkways, big open fields, really, really beautiful location. Great hospitality. They had this great area with the Lindt chocolate people and our own little pastry shop and nice little lounges. And so it was really quite nice. They have a really cool museum that documents a lot of the history over the last 100 years, and then a walk of fame for a lot of the famous horses throughout history. This is just some sites from the village and some of the shopping that was there. Everything from you know, Mercedes-Benz to, we had the Hermes shop there. Of course, the usual trailers and fountains and things. But the thing that was really unique about this show that I've never seen anywhere else is that they have so many bars and restaurants on the showgrounds, and after the show competition is over, everybody sticks around and parties, and there are bands and DJs and dancing, and as you can see, a little bit of drinking too. So it was quite the nightlife, which I've never seen at any other show before. So including, you know, riders and owners, and these are some of the team veterinarians here and some of the staff that we were working with. So that was a lot of fun. Each year they host or they choose a special partner country. And this year it just happened to be the United States. So it was a good year to be there. And it was interesting. This was their little logo, a perfect match with their region, the North Rhineland Westphalian region and USA. I guess there are a lot of, you know, kind of similarities with, you know, some of the people in the culture and a lot of connections there. But it was kind of funny to see, you know, all the American flags and then the cowboys and such that were there. They had some eagles. I'll talk about some of that a little bit later. But they had the national cheerleaders, the national cheerleading team there. They had some football players, and so they kind of like were trying to highlight all the American culture, and so it was kind of funny to see that. And they also had set up around the area different like Photoshop spots to take pictures. So it was kind of a funny time to be there. So one of my jobs as an FEI vet is that we are involved with checking all the horses in when they arrive at the competition grounds. And so we have to check their passports and health papers, brief exam, make sure everybody's healthy. The inspections and jog, I'll talk about in the next slide, but those are some of the things that we do to make sure that horses are fit for competition. So we had 650 horses that were competing over the 10 days that we had to examine, as well as another 350 demonstration and you know, ceremony horses that were used for all the different ceremonies that they're doing and the different events and demonstrations and things that they did throughout the week. So there were over 1,000 horses there that got checked in. So thankfully we had a lot of helpers. These were just some pictures from around the barn. Just some cute horses. And so a lot of these it was almost all permanent stabling, some, you know, neat old barns. There was a little bit of overflow in some tents, but for the most part, they were all stabled in nice big stalls. And then as the vet delegate, you know, there were 4 of us actually. So we had 4 of us because we had so many horses and so many competitions happening at once. There were 4 of us to kind of, you know, conquer and divide and be able to check in and jog all 650 horses, you know, to evaluate their soundness and fitness to compete. And then we work with the ground jury, or, you know, in other words, the president of the ground jury, who's one of the head judges, and then the other judges who make the final decision about the horses being allowed to continue the competition or being able to start competition. Then we also jog horses a second time for some of the competitions. So in all, you know, I think we ended up jogging about 850 horses over the 10 days. And horses that are in FEI, just a little side note, you know, they have to be kept in a separate compound. So once we've done all this work to make sure the biosecurity and make sure that they're healthy, we want to make sure that they're not mixing with other people, or that we have people from the general public coming in and out. We also want to make sure that as far as, you know, any kind of drugging or that sort of thing, that nobody's putting anything into their food. So they are in secure stabling once they've been admitted, and then you have to have a special pass to be able to go in and out. But then that makes it nice and quiet then for the horses, so they don't have, you know, a lot of crowds around, you know, when they're trying to eat, sleep, and that sort of thing. Personal veterinarians are allowed at FEI competitions, and there are a lot of physios, and especially in Europe, they rely a lot on the physiotherapists for helping to keep the horses sound, especially with FEI. It's very limited with the types of things that horses can receive for any kind of medication. So there are no non-steroidals, no bute, no Banamine, no Equiox, no steroids. So the only things that horses competing in FEI competition can have basically are if they're on EPM medications, they can have that. If they're on ulcer medications, certain antibiotics they can have if they have some, type of, infection or whatever. But apart from that, there really isn't anything else that they're allowed to have. So riders, all across the world, but especially around Europe, rely a lot on the physiotherapists, and there are a lot of people around Europe that do that. So lots of those people around the stabling. And then, so one of the competitions was the vaulting, and I wasn't really involved with this because I'm not licensed for vaulting, and honestly, I haven't really seen a whole lot of vaulting, but I just threw this little video in here. Just thought this was really interesting because it really is pretty fascinating. I worked with it a little bit at the Tryon World Equestrian Games 2018, but it's pretty crazy to see. I mean, the horses, we had to, evaluate these horses too, but obviously they have very strong backs with, all these people, jumping up on them and, flipping back and forth, and they have to be very, very steady, as you can see, and the lunger has to, make sure they keep the horse, going steady pace. So I thought this was just really fascinating, and, picture doesn't really do it justice. So I think you just have to kind of see a little bit of the video here to see what's involved.
Lisa, do these horses only canter left then always?
Yeah.
Doesn't that create a problem?
Well, I think they practice other ways at home, and they do a lot of work on these horses as well. But and when they're they practice, they're using mostly like a pommel, initially until they, kind of get down to it. So and these routines are not that long, so they usually they actually had, they choose the horses obviously that have, really good, strong backs. And you can see they've got that really thick pad on them. So they actually, seem to do pretty well.
Yeah, it looks just like a typical day at my barn.
Yeah, right. I remember trying to do this when I was like a teenager, and we had somebody, come to our barn. We were like trying to learn how to vault, and like, oh my God, couldn't even get up on the horse. So, it's just, I'm always just fascinated when I do see this. I won't go through anymore, but it was really sweet too. They really do, all of them at the end, will give the horse a big hug and a pat and everything. So, it's, they really do care about the horses too. So they're primarily gymnasts, but anyway, I thought that was, oops, sorry. That kind of a neat, oops, let me move on to the next one here. There we go. Okay. The driving, I should have put some videos of that in there too. That was another thing, don't have as much experience with the driving because we don't really have a ton of it in the United States, but in Europe it is huge. And so, there was one team from the United States, Chester Weber, who's been a fixture in the four-in-hand driving for many, many years, and has been the top U.S. driver, I think, for most of the time. But there are very few competitions in the United States, but they have them, regularly, and they have a lot of teams from that, especially like Germany, Hungary, Switzerland. But some of these countries had multiple teams for these competitions for the driving. And so it was, interesting to see the various just the level of competency. But then I wish I had more pictures. I should have put some videos of the marathon in there. But God, just the way that they maneuver these, foreign hands through some of these obstacles was pretty wild. So. Yeah. Oh, this was just for the jog. Actually the jog for the I put these pictures in here because that in itself is kind of an experience. So jogging the foreign hands, because so each one of these teams has 2 extra horses. So they have 6 horses that they jog, and they can substitute those horses, out after like the marathon or if there's a problem. So they jog 6 horses, but they have 6 like uber fit horses, and the horses that are doing this level of competition are as fit or fitter than the event horses. And so we had, I think, 30 teams with 6 horses. So 180 of these horses that are like uber fit and like on their hind legs and rearing and crazy and dragging these big guys around. I mean, it's amazing. There was one woman out of all those teams, but when you see how strong these horses are in this dragging these big guys, every one of them is like, over 6 foot and a couple 100 pounds, and trying to hang on to these, foreign hands. But, when they're jogging them, trying to jog these horses was a little wild, I'll say. The dressage competition, top notch, and it was. I have done a lot of dressage shows and worked at a lot of FEI events, and I've never seen, a crowd quite like this. Probably at the Olympics this year they had this many people, but this was, wild cheering on their feet, 6,300 people in the stands, plus all the, the grooms and all the support people and everybody that were on the side, and, yelling and screaming. It was, big event. And so this was actually one of the qualifiers, kind of a final selection for the Olympics. So all the top riders were there, and it was, especially cool. I was there watching. This is Isabel Verth and Wendy, doing their final ride, and this is where she was selected for the team. This horse was phenomenal, but it was really, really neat because this moment for Isabel, you could see, was just really special. And when she finished her test, she was like in tears. She was just like so thrilled with this horse. And then the crowd was, giving her a standing ovation. And so I just caught this picture of her, coming out of the ring, and she's just like, grinning ear to ear. So, so that was pretty special. The eventing was a 4-star. So this was not the highest level of competition that there is for eventing. But this is a really special event because, it is one of the only team events in the world for eventing. So a lot of teams and a lot of countries use this as, kind of a preparation ground for championships and for the Olympics. And with the timing of it this year, it was only a couple weeks before Paris. And so the Olympic riders were not competing at this event, although some of them did like the dressage and then just withdrew because they were, most of the riders were in Europe. But still that was pretty stiff competition, being a 4-star. So it still is, very, very high level. And this was in our, what we call the 10-minute box, or the D box, where we evaluate all the horses after the cross country. We do a similar thing for the driving horses after the marathon. So we evaluated all of those horses as they were coming off the course, either the event course or the driving course. We're watching how they cool down, making sure that they all look like they're, still, ready to go, that they're not, completely exhausted, not dull, depressed, panting. Vocalizing can be a sign when they're like overly exhausted, that they start to, kind of whinny. And that's usually a bad sign if we see that, at the end of cross country or the marathon, because that, can be a sign that they're about to collapse. If they look weak or reluctant to move, if we see any kind of blood on the horse, those horses then are eliminated. But the horses did great. We had, fantastic weather, and really didn't have to do a whole lot. Just, kind of keep an eye on things and monitor the horses as they're cooling down. So not too much work that day. Oh, I had some other pictures here. I don't know what happened to, oops, escape. I don't know what I did with my here. Some of the jumping. There were multiple there were like multiple jumping competitions every single day. So they had all levels of jumping, and then the 5-star riders. This is actually Laura Kraut. The 5-star riders. These were a lot of the Olympic riders and some of the Olympic horses that were competing here. But we had Nations Cups events and just all different levels. So like all day, all night, there would be big competitions in the main ring. This was pretty interesting. I've never seen this at a horse show either, that other than maybe the Olympics, and it's not all based around horses. So this was pretty cool and unique that they do every year. So they have an opening and closing ceremony, and the opening ceremony was had kind of the American theme because they were the partner. This picture actually was from the closing ceremony, where they had kind of the Parade of Nations, and they had all the nation's flags coming in. But this was, each night of the opening and closing was like a couple hour ceremony with, all sorts of, music and fireworks, and just so many things happening at once, and the crowd's going crazy, and they wave their flags. I'll just play a few videos from some of this. This was the opening ceremony with the American theme and all the Western riders and the Old West, and they had dancers, and they had the cheerleaders, and they had football players, and so it really was, a lot happening at once. There's some more here.
I bet that went over well with the horses.
Well, I don't know if I did that.
Whoops, I think iPhone Gene, you might need to mute your connection here. You can hear some background noise.
Oh, I guess that was it. So any questions?
I think if you have a question, just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. I can kick things off. Let's see. So if you stop sharing, you'll be big again.
Oh, let's see. Stop sharing.
Yeah. So can you compare this experience to the Olympics?
So yeah, so actually it's kind of interesting that I went to Tokyo, and obviously that was kind of an odd year because of COVID, and that we were under quarantine. So although it was kind of a unique Olympics, and I'm not sure that I can compare it directly to like what Paris was, that sort of thing. but even compared to Paris, I mean, Paris, the venue at Paris, the stadium held 15,000. So this was 3 times the number of people that they had, even for all the, the events. And the events at Paris were packed. I didn't get to go there because they required a French license and a French language exam to be able to work there.
Wow.
So it was pretty much all French vets. I had a few friends that are from Belgium that are, fluent in French and had a French license that were able to go and to work there. I had other friends that went just to watch. And so I got a lot of the inside scoop from there as well. And, I don't think anything can really compare to, Versailles. I don't think there will ever be another Olympics quite like Versailles, but and the pictures and the venue was, just looked spectacular. But yeah, it wasn't the crowds that they had, like at Aachen. So that was really unique. And in Tokyo, we didn't have any crowds because of COVID. There could be no spectators. I mean, the people's families weren't even there. There we only had I think, on the whole venue, I think we only had, like about, 500 or 600 people at any given time. Because of the restrictions, and they only had like one discipline at a time come in. So we had like all the dressage horses come in for the first week, and then eventing the second week, and show jumping the third week. So there was really no overlap, except for some of the workers. So that was a much smaller event, which was really cool and unique in the fact that we really had kind of a really intimate experience with all of the riders, and kind of the time that we spent with them.
Well, that was going to be my next question is, who are some of the famous horses and riders that you've met in your?
Well, I mean, I hung out with, Laura Kraut and, Mark Spearbaum, and yeah, I mean, well, like I say, I had was around, I wouldn't say I hung out with Isabel Wirth, but was around with her team, and just kind of hanging out with some of the riders, all the team, coaches, and the vets and the grooms, and some of the riders, not all the riders were out partying at night, but some of them were. So, yeah, so that was, that was fun here at Aachen, because everybody, it's a very much a, fun atmosphere. There's a lot of competition, a lot of people, but really enthusiastic crowds. And that's the other thing that I thought was really unique compared to any other place I've ever been or seen, even on TV, was just the crowds really got into it, and, yelling and cheering and waving their hankies. That's a special thing, I guess, at Aachen, kind of a tradition that people all bring like a handkerchief. And, you get 40,000 people waving, these white handkerchiefs around the set, and they were doing the wave, and, so just like you'd expect at at a football event, so very much like, going to a Badger football game or something. So a lot of, music, and, the crowds, and they really, whoop everybody up, and lots to see. And so Aachen was really pretty special that way. So on top of, being one of the top competitions in the world too. So.
Anybody else have questions, or I'm going to keep going? I have a whole page full, but I don't want to monopolize Dr. Borzynski. How do you find the vets from the other countries? I'm sure you've gotten to know some of them. You see them at every event.
Yeah.
Do most of them speak English? I mean, are they?
Fortunately, I could speak German, not great, and I could understand more than I could speak. I thought my accent was pretty good until I tried to speak, and they were like, "Huh, what?" So it was kind of funny. Like it kind of became a little bit of a joke that they would speak in English, in German. I just respond in English. Like, we kind of just, it worked it out that way. So they can all speak English, they can all understand it. And it was kind of the same thing. They could understand my English, better than my German, but then they would speak German. So But we had a good time. And a lot of the team vets I've known from various competitions through the years, at Kentucky and World Equestrian Games. I worked, at the 2010 and 2018 World Equestrian Games and Tokyo. And so I've spent a lot of time with, some of those vets. So that's fun. Just, it's kind of a chance for all of us to get together. And it was fun because we typically, like I say, don't have an opportunity to, go out to nightclubs or whatever, but they're all right at the horse show. So it was kind of a, oh, sorry. So it was kind of a, neat experience. So
How many
Yeah.
FEI events do you go to each year, would you say? Just,
well, I mean, I was doing like about 6 a year, and now this
Wow.
year, I'll be doing 9, I think. So
And there are some in the US, but mostly international?
yeah, so well, all over. So New York, choice in Kentucky, a couple times in Florida, Amsterdam, Aachen, Germany, going to Thermal in a couple weeks, California. So kind of all over. Mostly the US, but and this was, like I say, the biggest one that I've done to date, but I'll be going back, I think, next year. So
What events are you licensed in? So dressage,
For dressage, show jumping, eventing, and now just recently driving. So
okay. And what's involved in getting licensed in them?
Um, so, for your first license, you have to have been a veterinarian for at least 5 years. You have to have experience in the discipline, or that you're working with, and then you have to do a minimum of 3 apprenticeships in that particular discipline. And then once you have, that license and you've been doing it for a while, then you can add on additional disciplines just by working as an apprentice at those shows. So I've been doing the show jumping, dressage, and eventing for a long time, and obviously, there are a lot of similarities with eventing, dressage, show jumping, and I've competed in all 3 of those disciplines. The driving was a new one, and basically got my license after having worked at Aachen with the vets there, and they said that I would be fine to do that because there. There are a lot of similarities between the combined driving and the eventing. So,
Yeah.
just some differences in the rules and things, but for the most part, what we're looking for and the things that we're doing for those different disciplines are pretty similar.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, people, hit us with your questions. Ask Dr. Borzynski one that you think she's never been asked before. Such a shy group.
That's all right.
I'll ask the participants a question. Are any of you riding at the FEI level? You can just raise your hand if you want to. My goodness. Okay. Well, Molly, do you have questions?
The question I had was really about the comparison, and you answered that extremely well. I heard a lot of this before this presentation
Yeah.
because you talked about it at the barn when you were there. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I got a little
You got the
lucky.
preview.
Yeah, I got a lucky preview.
Yeah.
So between the European horses and the US horses, were either one of them more kind of generally more fit than, I mean, was there a difference in the?
There's definitely a big advantage to the quality of horses in Europe. I mean, they've had these breeding programs for so many centuries and have really refined it so that they just produce a lot of really quality horses. And so I think they definitely have an advantage. I mean, as you see, in competitions, year after year, and Olympics after Olympics and all the championships that, they are, you know, a little bit up on us with their breeding programs, and obviously, you know, a lot of U.S. riders are buying from Europe, you know, but they just have a lot of quality. The interesting thing is too, you know, for better or worse, you know, they bring them along pretty quickly, and so they have a lot of young horse classes that they do, but I think the horses, you know, the way that they develop them, the way they raise them, really at least sets them up, you know, to be fit for that. But compared to, you know, like what we do in the US, you know, riders are riding, you know, much higher level, much quicker. The horses are going much quicker. You know, they really have developed, you know, the FEI levels. I mean, they have FEI championship, you know, pony levels. So kids are competing in FEI. So they start them
goodness.
young, you know, they're riding at a young age in international competition, and so, you know, they just take it a little more seriously. They're a little more, you know, developed in their programs for the youth, for the horses, and the competitions that they have, and the availability. I mean, there's just so many of them too. I mean, they've got, you know,
Is that sort of
hundreds
true
and
across all the
hundreds.
disciplines? Is
What's
that sort of
that?
true off across all
Pretty
the
much, yeah,
disciplines?
pretty much, yeah. So I mean, I think vaulting is the smallest, obviously, of, you know, of all of them. You know, so that's kind of an outlier, but, you know, for the dressage, the jumping, the eventing, even for the driving, you know, they have so many competitions available to them, and it's nice that, you know, Europe is relatively small. It's like the size of the US, so they can, you know, travel a lot, and
Yeah.
they don't even have to travel, you know, that far to be able to get to, you know, hundreds of competitions. So, so I think between the breeding program and the, you know, the availability of shows, and the fact that they can just, you know, go to a, you know, an FEI show in a weekend, and, you know, go, you know, travel country to country and have that level of competition that they're, you know, up against all the time, I think is, you know, is a big advantage too.
Did you get off the campus or off the
It
showgrounds?
did, yeah. So actually, yeah, I did tour around that. I didn't go too far, and I didn't have a whole lot of extra time, and I didn't have a car, but I went into the town of Aachen, like I said, that had a really, really interesting history, which I wasn't even aware of before I went. But it was really a beautiful, beautiful city, and then, you know, the history, you know, with the ruins, you know, from thousands of years ago, and then all the, you know, the buildings from the, you know, 8th and 9th century, and the cathedral and everything were
It,
really,
it is
really cool.
sure different than here in terms of the age of the
Yeah,
buildings. Oh my
yeah, right.
goodness. Almost
Yeah,
any place in Europe.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it's easy, you know, it's not too hard to get to. You know, I actually flew into Amsterdam, got a direct flight from Chicago, and then just took the train from Amsterdam to Aachen, which is a couple of hour train ride. But there's some airports a little bit closer, but I don't like to take direct, or I like to take direct connections. So so it's easy to get to, but it's a great spectator event. If anybody ever wants to go, it's really worth going to see it. It's an event. It's a destination for sure.
Yeah, it sure looks like it.
Yeah. Cool. We just had a chat from Ruth saying not an FEI competitor, USDF and USEA. So,
Yeah.
well, I think then we're going to let you get back to your work in Kentucky. And
Okay.
thank you for this enlightening event. Great pictures, great video. I,
It's wonderful.
I have to say I'm impressed with how well your video showed on this Zoom.
Oh,
Because
good.
sometimes videos over Zoom are real glitchy, and yours went, I mean, you could actually see them vaulting. So
Yeah.
that was nice.
Thanks for
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah,
Thank you
everyone
so
say
much. And
great
I'll see
presentation.
you
Thanks for
soon.
sharing.
Thanks.
I'll
Beautiful
see you at the
photos,
barn soon.
videos. Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Take
All
care.
right.
All
Have
Okay,
right.
fun.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.